Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. I'm with Mark Welch, known Mark for a very long time, trustee of West Chester Township, Ohio, northern suburb of Cincinnati. Got an election coming up this year.
Yes, sir.
And you've been here, how many years have you been trustee?
12 years.
12 years, so it's a been a long time. I always brag about West Chester. A lot of people love West Chester. West Chester is still rated one of the greatest places, not just me saying it, one of the best places to live in the country, and I would say in the world.
Yep.
And why is that? Because it had good policy. And
That's
we had
right.
good government.
That's
And you've
exactly
been a
right.
part of that good government for a long time. You and George Lang, who's now Senator Lang, tag teamed as trustees. A very good policy front here to kind of create a business-friendly environment.
Exactly.
And with good business, then came all kinds of people with places to live. And it's just turned out to be a great success story.
It really is.
So obviously, I want you to be trustee again. You're up. There's a bunch of other people who are coming into the race.
Correct. Yep.
I mean, you know how it is. Incumbents usually have the advantage, but you can't take anything for granted.
That's right. Yep.
When you start having there's at least 4 challengers that I know of. And so you have to go out and run and do all the things you have to do, and it takes a lot of money to do that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But your track record's great, and you're one of the last bits of what's been great about West Chester. And so I obviously want to see you run again, win again, and do all kinds of great things in the future.
Thank you, Rich. Really appreciate it.
And the reason we're talking is because I thought it'd be a good idea to, there's a lot of things that are going on, and you and I were talking about the Trump executive orders
Yep.
that he did, I think is June 6th of 2025.
Yep.
And one of those big ones was the air taxi, to take away, allow for the testing of the air taxis. And we know Joby Aerospace Aviation is right up the road.
Right.
Of 71 cuts right through West Chester, and so it's an exciting idea. And with Joby building those air taxis in Dayton, Ohio, they're going to ship them to. I know for a fact they're going to Dubai.
Yep.
That's first place. And so you and I are excited about that. We were talking, and I thought, well, it would be a nice opportunity to talk about it in general.
Yeah.
And I was talking to you about this building, and I don't know that this is the right building for it, but we were talking about air taxi service in West Chester.
Right.
And as we were talking, I was thinking, well, and people say, well, why do you like Mark Welch so much? It's like over the years, when you look at the way that trustees have handled, and you've been a huge part of leading that, have handled like the parks, VOA Park,
Yeah.
and business enterprise zones, and the way that it's been easy to come in here, keep the taxes down, bring in lots of investment, create opportunities, so all kinds of creative enterprises can come in. You've been part of that, so you and I were talking about, well, the next wave of transportation is going to be these vertical takeoff taxis. They're like an Uber, where you pick up your phone and you say, hey, I want to go to the Reds game. And you would come to a place, if you set up a vertical port, they call them vertiports, you would come here, buy your ticket, or it'd be on your phone, and you would get on in your air taxi. It would take you where you want to go. And you and I were talking about one of the biggest problems, and I know that on the business side, one of the biggest problems that we have in West Chester is we have these great hotels. You can come here, walk everywhere, you can have a business meeting with people, but the problem is you got to get to CVG.
Yep.
And most people
Dayton.
Or Dayton, yeah. And both ways, you have
About an
traffic.
hour.
To get to the Dayton airport, you got to go through downtown Dayton.
That's right.
To get to the CVG, you got to go through downtown Cincinnati.
That's right.
So in traffic, if you're 2 to 6, traffic's heavy.
Yes.
So you got to leave at least an hour early to get.
I'd say a couple hours early. There could be an accident. Road closed ahead. Right lane.
So you have a great business climate in West Chester. It's very friendly for people to come in and do business, but then when people come to see you to do business, it requires an unusual amount of travel time to get to and from the airport.
Yeah.
And I think if we could fix that, it would help even more the business community. So we were just having a chat about this exciting new executive order that Trump signed, because that means now Joby's going to be able to start making product. They're going to be FAA certified. Looks like in late third, early fourth quarter of this year, and that means that they'll start shipping product to Dubai and China and I think Japan. Toyota's partnered up with them.
Yes, they have $500 million.
So that's a big deal, big commitment.
Is.
And you know, when Toyota gets involved in something, it's pretty much, I mean, that's a solid bet.
That's it.
They've also partnered with Uber, so this isn't just some ragtag fly-by-night operation. This is a reality.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So the real question is, what communities in Ohio, or the United States for that matter, what communities in Ohio are going to have the guts to be the first to flight and say, we're going to put a vertiport and
somewhere
set up some infrastructure. So you and I were talking about this building. This used to be a Hollywood.
It was Gold's Gym. Then it was Urban Active. Then it was LA Fitness.
Oh, okay.
And then it went to a Sporta.
Okay. So it changed a lot.
It closed, yeah.
But it is a really cool building, and it's a shame because it's just sitting here doing nothing. There's this giant parking lot. It's right in the middle of West Chester.
And it's 6 acres.
Is it 6 acres?
It's literally 6 acres here. Yeah. If you look at all the parking here, I mean, you have you have room for a lot of cars to come here and park it and go to the airport and come back, you know, and.
Well, that's what we were talking about. It was like if it's happening anyway. It's like what was the early towns that grew along the railroad routes? Those were most successful cities. Were those
exactly
that
and
a train
waterway?
Station.
Yes.
And then here, why West Chester flourished is you had highway access.
Yeah.
And years ago they built the interchange, and now we had Union Central Boulevard, and all kinds of great things evolved from it. So highway access was a big deal.
Yeah.
And now I would say that these vertical takeoff vehicles, and they're going to be done in 2 phases. First will be like an Uber, where you just call a taxi, and this is like Back to the Future. This is essentially a flying car driven like with drone props, and it takes off and leaves. It can leave out of your driveway. But initially, you'll have to have a pilot that flies them, and it'd have to be kind of government regulated, heavy on that side.
Yeah.
So you have to have some government partnership in order to make it happen. Eventually, I think within 5 to 10 years, you're talking about private ownership. Well, you can have it if you had enough room at your house, you can land it in your yard and go back and forth to work.
Yeah.
But for quite a long time, most people will have access to them through like a bus terminal service. And so it's here, it's going to happen, but who's going to be able to put it forward? And that's one thing that you've always been good at, kind of getting in front of things and being open to ideas, and it takes a lot to make something like that happen.
Yeah, it does.
But if you don't have trustees that can put their arm around, first the business community, second, then all the residents, not that residents are second, but you got to create infrastructure so they can work and do their stuff. You have to have everything kind of going, and it takes innovation to get there. And I don't mean to talk so much, but this is kind of an exciting idea.
Yes, it's a very exciting idea. So on a couple points that you made, I believe one of the fundamental focuses that government should create an environment where businesses can prosper. And as the businesses prosper, they add new jobs. And then people come in and you've got your families are creating wealth and all that. So it's really important in a community like West Chester to create an environment where businesses feel welcome, and instead of thinking no you can't, we think let's think win-win here.
Yeah.
And as we think win-win,
you should always think win-win.
Right, you should, right? Because if it's win-lose, it's no deal.
Yeah.
Right. So
win-win.
Yeah. And so when we look at businesses coming in, we're thinking, well, how can we work together to make this happen? And in that way, the township is a place where businesses want to come. We have over 3,600 businesses in West Chester today.
3,600.
3,600. Let me give you a couple real quick instances or statistics here. As you know, West Chester Township is the largest township in Ohio with over 1,308 townships. Our population is right around 67,000. We have a workforce that comes into West Chester on a daily basis of almost 60,000. In the last 27 years,
they come into
the township
from
to work. Yeah, from outside to work. In the last 27 years since Union Center Boulevard Interchange opened, we've had over $4.3 billion of new investment. We've created over 58,000 new jobs, and more than 50 million square feet of new space has been developed. Today, West Chester Township's property valuation, is only second behind Cincinnati at $3.3 billion.
Cincinnati, the city.
The city of Cincinnati.
The city of Cincinnati.
Right. Yeah. We have greater valuation in Indian Hill than Blue Ash, than Montgomery, than you pick the community. We're it.
Well, I mean, Indian Hill has like isolated real estate that's really valuable, but as far as
They
the
have
rest of
no
it,
industry.
there's nothing there. And the balance here is there's a lot of lucrative residential property mixed with an extraordinary amount of business.
Yeah, yeah. And so the benefit of the businesses coming is they help to relieve the tax burden off the residents. You know, that's not intuitively obvious to most people, because it's like, well, I pay my property taxes and all this. And oh, by the way, in the township, we don't have any income tax, right? So that's another secret weapon we have that businesses like. And there's no income tax on a corporation's profit in West Chester.
And that's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
That's a big deal.
You know, if you're talking 1 or 2%, I mean, that can all go right to your bottom line. So it's important that we continue with the business, because the businesses pay a very large portion of the taxes, and they don't impact with regards to services, whether it's safety services, police or fire, and they don't impact the schools.
Yeah.
And yet they're paying this because every dollar you pay in property taxes in West Chester, 62% goes to the schools, 3% goes to Butler Tech,
62%
goes to the schools. Yes, we should be watching them like a hawk,
we should.
making sure that you're being financially transparent in all the things that they do, right? But they've got their own board, right?
Oh yeah.
So what we can do for the schools is to create the business environment so businesses come in here. Get this, from the standpoint of local investment in Lakota schools are shared by West Chester and Liberty. We have the exact same number of schools in both communities. West Chester pays 70% of the local funding.
Because they have all the business.
That's right. And Liberty pays about 30%. So, you know, we're doing the lion's share of investing in Lakota schools, and we're glad about that. You know, these TIF districts, we're sitting in the Union Center Boulevard TIF district. We have a number of these TIF districts. Adam, the new treasurer, he's been there about 3 years, has stated that before that they didn't want TIFs. The schools didn't want TIFs. But when Adam came in, he started looking into it, and now they've realized that TIFs are good for them because it's invisible when it comes to state funding. So state funding doesn't look at what the schools are getting through TIF taxation. If we were to take away all the TIFs and suddenly that tax revenue would go into the schools, the state would cut back. So it's really, that's a win-win.
That's a win-win. And the whole goal, especially in a trustee position, is to create win-wins for everybody.
That's right. That's what you want. So, you know, we're doing a good job. We have to be forward-thinking, sort of visionaries. And you know, we want to focus on advanced manufacturing, information technology, health sciences. We have a great healthcare system. Since West Chester Hospital opened in 2009, suddenly we have a medical corridor over there.
I love that hospital. I love that it's there.
I love it. You know, you can, and if you don't like that one, go to Christ Hospital.
Right across the street.
Right across the street. And then across the highway, Children's Hospital.
And you can go from that to go into Costco.
That's right. And there you go.
Or you can go to the park.
Go to ProScan, get your MRI, and go right into Costco and get some, you know, whatever you want for dinner that night.
That's right. You can stop by and get some meatballs.
It's fantastic. Yes. So you know, Christ Hospital and Children's are in Liberty. So you know, obviously it's part of that corridor for healthcare. And so that is a very important part of what we offer here in West Chester. And you were talking about Joby and the skyports. You know, when you think about it, West Chester Township is the perfect place to put something like that in.
I think so.
Yeah, because we're right on the busy Interstate 75. 150,000 cars every day goes by Interstate 75. And great, we've got that traffic, but it can clog, right?
I mean, it's good to have traffic.
It
means
is.
People want to go where you're at.
That's right.
But we got to find a way to alleviate that traffic, and these sky cars allow you to stack traffic.
Yes, and you know, the other thing I was thinking after we were talking about this is that, let's just say this would become a skyport. You can get Anywhere you are in Liberty and West Chester, you can get here in about 15 minutes.
Yep.
And you could have your wife drop you off, or your kids drop you off, or a friend drop you off here, and you don't have to pay for parking or anything. And then the car goes home, and you say, "Hey, I'm going to be back in 4 days," and they just pick you up right here. It's not that long drive,
Right.
to pick you up. So that's these are wonderful benefits of something like that being located here. And so we just have to create that environment and woo.
Yep.
You have to woo businesses, right?
Yep.
Government is force.
Oh yeah.
But the government here can create that environment for win-win that would woo these businesses to us.
So this is why I've always liked you over the years. We've always had a good relationship because you're always thinking. Sometimes these things are ideas and they never go anywhere. You get a bunch of people in a room and say, "Hey, let's do it," and there's always 2 or 3 people like, "I can't do it."
Oh, that's too risky.
Oh yeah. But here's kind of where West Chester's at. West Chester's been in a growth spurt. When it first started, this was a bunch of really kind of marshy land with a power line that went through it, and no one wanted to touch it. But Beckett Ridge was a great, successful community just outside of 275 Loop, and there was lobbying to put the interchange in. And what would that do? Well, if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, people could just poo-poo it and say what they wanted.
Yeah.
Now you have a success story because it's been gloriously successful.
Yes,
So then what you have is a second generation. It's just like second generation business owners or second generation children or whatever. If they don't earn it along the way, if they weren't part of the foundation,
Right.
then you tend to lose the value for what got you there. Now, if you listen to all the talk, I like bike paths. And I like, everyone likes schools and wants the schools to work for, if it's in your community, you want it to be working. But when you start getting that second generation discussion, you forget about what got you where you are.
Exactly.
And you stop innovating. And so now the conversations about, I talk about the connector path from the Little Miami River over the Great Miami River and the bike paths that run through.
Yeah.
And that's the priorities. And when you start making bike paths that's your priority, that should be a luxury. That should be like, oh, on Sunday we can go ride a bike, honey. But if you don't stay sharp and keep stay plus on your income, then you're going to frustrate people who are investing in the community, and
That's right.
they won't want to stick around.
Well, back in you were talking about the green umbrella that came to the township in May of 2018, and they came with this idea of putting an east-west connector in from Butler Warren over to connecting at where the old Trinity Pub was on 747.
Yeah.
And the cost of that bike hike trail was $13.8 million, and it didn't include the creating a bigger right-of-way, which is taking of land.
Right.
There's
There's a lot of eminent domain.
There's a
issues.
lot of eminent domain would come on. I'm not a fan of that, But more recently, I talked to Greg Wilkins, engineer's office, and I asked them about in West Chester, I think we've done a pretty good job in communities of having sidewalks in and around, like in Union Center Boulevard and the streets of West Chester and things like that. But there are these long connector paths that people want to have. People have to first realize that in West Chester, there are roads that West Chester doesn't own, that we're not responsible for, we don't maintain. Union Center Boulevard out here is a county road.
Yeah.
Mulhauser Road is a county road. Tylersville is a county road. And then you've got 747, which is a state road. Route 42 is a state road. We're not responsible for snow removal or anything on those things. But people always talk about these big connectors. So I had Greg Wilkins work me up a quotation on what it would cost to get a 10-foot wide, that's a minimum for a high revised code, bike hike path. It's called multimodal path, to go from on Tylersville Road from 747 to the Swordsville West Chester Road. And by the way, in 2027 there's going to be a roundabout going in at the Swordsville West Chester Road.
That's going to be tricky.
That's going to be tricky. Yeah. So Greg got back to me and said, look, you'd want to go with the 11-foot path because you might be able to get some other funding for it. He goes, but to cover that span would be $3.4 million. That's an 11-foot, so that calculates to $309 per linear foot. That's a lot of money. The township can't bear that. We won't bear that. If the people want it, let the people speak, put it on a levy, and
vote for it.
That's the same thing I said back in 2018. I'm not making this decision. I'm not going to empty the coffers of these TIF districts that we have, where the money is there for infrastructure.
Yep.
So I'd put on a ballot. But that's 2.11 miles for $3.4 million.
And for what purpose? I mean, it's an extreme luxury.
Yep.
And it's nice, and,
Yeah.
and I think it represents a very successful society. But if you really do a calculation, you're talking about the raw numbers. How much business and enterprise to keep taxes down, to avoid having to pay all that? How much business do you have to create that's new and fresh to justify that luxury?
Yeah. I'd say a lot.
I say a lot.
That's
So
right.
you need to think about a lot of things like skyports.
Yes, exactly. And maybe working with the aviation industry.
Yeah.
Wright Pat's not far away, right?
Right.
And we have a great number of businesses here that are in the GE. Pole Zeros over here. I mean, CTL Aerospace is right there,
Right
you
over
work.
here.
Yeah, and there's many more. And so if we get it, if we can start partnering in public private partnerships to create even more space, because these businesses are growing, and there's always new technologies, there's innovation. So what we want to do is have our finger on the pulse of what's happening, and then be able to go and get it. Because a jurisdiction like West Chester, there's three things that we have to be. We have to be competitive, because we're always competing with all the jurisdictions
you have to
around
compete
us.
with everybody,
That's right.
everywhere.
That's right. We have to be marketable.
Yep.
We have to have a story that people like to hear, that attracts people, attracts families, attracts businesses. And third, we have to be sustainable, because you can't be the goose that's laying the golden eggs and not get fed.
That's right.
And you're fed by businesses coming in here, creating that tax base, which brings people in, buying homes. Do you know that the average sale price of a house in West Chester in 2024 was $409,000?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's not.
But that's a good value, because it's a desired place, and
You want a good value. Yes.
You got to protect that good value, but you can't protect it by all of a sudden getting very restrictive on your innovation.
That's correct.
Because it got here because of innovation.
That's right.
Including making sure that we didn't have signage that was obtrusive on the skyline. We
That's right.
maintain our value from the core competencies of establishing the community.
Yeah.
And but you can't stop innovating.
Right.
So back on this whole Joby thing, and now that it's going to move forward, it's going to be a race to certain cities. I think New York's talking about having a line into Manhattan.
Yeah.
There's a few places. I mean, you can see where Washington, D.C. would definitely benefit from the air taxi market. But with the proximity to Dayton, and that's why you and I were talking about it, I know personally that Joby already has a relationship with Delta. And CVG, Delta has a good presence there.
Yep.
So it probably wouldn't take a lot to work out. If you had one vertiport like here in West Chester, that kind of got everybody out to the outside loop of the city of Cincinnati, and then you could arrange to have one at CVG.
Yep.
Now you have a point for point, and now you have a way for people to get used to the technology as it's growing. And then you start adding on other vertiports like Kings Island, like one at Great American Ballpark. So if you're up here staying at one of these nice hotels, and I know this happens a lot, hey, let's go to the Reds game tonight. Let me take you to a Reds game, and because you have people in from business, and you take them to a Reds game.
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to get them down there? No one wants to sit in traffic for an hour.
That's true.
If you could do a 10-minute flight from here to down there, they'll do it in a second.
Yeah.
So that's the way you can enhance your business community, because you already have a lot of great restaurants and good stuff to do. And but how are you going to go to the next level? You have to find a way to get out the next cutting edge.
That's right. That's right. And you do a lot at the CTL. You guys bring in a lot of people from all over the world into there, and you experience it as much as even Procter and Gamble or General Electric.
Oh yeah.
And you have them staying here, I imagine, in West Chester. Oh, by the way, let me just talk about.
They usually stay right over there at that hotel, or the two other ones right there.
They're so close,
and
so
they
convenient.
can walk to this place.
Yes, I can tell you this. I did a study not long ago. I'm talking in the last couple of months. When an issue came up about short-term rentals in West Chester. That's like Airbnb and VRBO. We have 18 functional hotels in West Chester. There's one that's been on the books that's not functional yet. It's the Hyatt House up there off of Liberty. But
they're trying to get that going for a long time.
They have been trying to get it going. A bunch of wealthy doctors spending a bunch of money, and somebody's not being a good general contractor to move that thing along.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's a lot of hotels.
That's a lot of hotels. But you know what? You don't. If somebody wants to come in and put a hotel in, my belief is that I am not here to tell you no, you can't. Because you're the expert on hotels. You look at the demographics, you look at the number of people that come. I'm telling you, you do your analytics. And if you want to put a hotel in, we will make it as business friendly as we can so you can do it. And let me tell you the benefit to West Chester Township with our hotels. Those 18 hotels in 2024, we have a 3% excise tax on the room rates, right? That generated $1.2 million to West Chester. Boom, right to the bottom line. In addition to that, the valuation of the various hotels, the Marriott over here, that has a valuation of about $34 million, and it's in a TIF district. The valuation that of all these hotels paid into our West Chester coffers $1.8 million in property taxes. So in 2024 alone, the hotels were responsible for $3 million for West Chester.
And that's a good thing.
That's a great thing.
And how many places could say that? Because the biggest complaint I hear about the hotels for people that come in to see me and just traveling, they're always booked. Even with that many hotels, they stay full.
That's right.
And it really shouldn't be that way, because I think they came in to be accommodating, and there's just not enough of them to fill the amount of foot traffic that comes through.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's almost like Orlando.
Well, you know what?
But there's no Disney World here.
That's right.
This is just business and
it's
nice restaurants.
Business.
There's a nice lake and some wonderful things to do, but
that's right. Well, the lake that you're probably referring to is Beckett Park, which isn't very far from here, where the township just put $2 million into a splash pad, which, oh, by the way, is the largest free public splash pad in Ohio and the second largest in the United States. And so this kind of gets back to what my feeling is about, how we should invest in parks and things like that. I'm all for investing in parks when it's not a special interest.
Right.
The splash pad, every time I've gone past that since it opened up 2 weeks ago, it's full of kids, full of cars, and lots of people taking advantage of it, right? That's not a special interest. That's every family in West Chester that can take advantage of that. When I get it start to tighten up a little bit is for the special interest stuff, where there's a small group, like for instance, bike hike paths. You can't spend all that money on bike hike paths for the avid bicycle rider who rides 100 miles a week, because the number of people who do this is like 1%.
I know. That's
yeah. And get this, when you go and you try to put a sidewalk in on a road, and you let the homeowner know that, okay, we're going to put this in, and they go, oh, that's great, but you're going to be responsible for maintenance. They say, oh, okay, put it on the other side. That's how people, they don't want the long time.
Because they're not going to use it anyway.
No, they're not.
They're just going to say yes to be accommodating, be nice neighbors, but they're not going to be out there with their bike helmet riding around.
No way. And we talked about that 2.11 miles on Tylersville, right?
Yeah.
And if we were to have that on a ballot, a levy for those things, the people on the east side would go, I'm never going to use that. No, I'm not paying for it. I don't want to pay for it. So
well, they might. They might. But you should put it out there so that they could chase after it, and then.
Well, they're going to want like kinds of things on 42, and 42 is a particularly difficult area. Okay. It's 3.1 miles of just straight road, and it's very tight on the right of way, and they're definitely taking.
And it was built that way. I mean, it's very old. It's been there a long time.
That's right. That used to be a buffalo trail.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Long time ago. So it's built constrained.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And behind it is residential stuff. So it's not like you're going to have a
can't push them back.
Yeah, there's so.
But that's what makes it charming. That's what makes some of this stuff fun. But that's also what makes good government difficult.
Yep.
Because you have to be experienced enough to have your hands off, but be hands on enough to be fiscally right about everything. Because you have to be a good conduit for how the money's spent, without being obtrusive, so you squash innovation. Right. I think it's funny, you start hearing some of these challengers, and when you've been successful, like you have been, you've been there during the successful period, and you have incumbents that want to chip away at it, they're like, well, I wouldn't spend money on the landscaping. you guys were wasteful. And you look proportionally, the amount of people that come on, and you want to sell the community a certain way, and people who are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into a new business want to see a nice plant when you get off the highway. And so you get the criticism of people who have no idea how this stuff fits together.
That's exactly right.
I don't think they have a snowball's chance. But when you have a lot of people challenging you, you do have to defend your turf, and it costs money and it costs time, and you do have to get out there. But no one ever asks the right questions in these things, so then the important stuff never gets talked about.
That's true. That's true. When you go to a forum, it's not a debate.
No.
They ask the individual, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And it all sounds good, and they get the crowd eating out of their hand. But it's like, well, hold on a second. That's not your rhetoric doesn't match your record here, so. People can be deceived pretty easy, and you get some wolves in sheep's clothing, that's going on, and you have to be able to push back.
I've been to a lot of those forums that you've been to,
yeah.
And I've watched them, and it's always, not to be demeaning to the people who write them, but it's usually some 25-year-old kid that's a reporter for the local paper, and they come and they all get together in a little committee, and they get a bag of Wendy's food and eat some chicken nuggets what should we ask them? And they write down some things, and they write down all the wrong things because they're only 25 years old and they don't really understand the deep stuff of how do you work out the funding issues and be attractive and spend the money on a correct thing, and who doesn't like bike pass? And why can't you have them everywhere?
Yeah,
Boy,
because they're expensive.
yeah, very expensive, and you have to have eminent domain cases and you get locked up in court.
And they're not our roads.
And then you got to turn around and negotiate a union contract with the police and the fire department.
Right.
And then you still got to be optimistic and happy, and it's a tough job, and you've done a great job of doing it.
Thanks, Rich.
And I think we should have some more discussions about what what to do about this, getting a vertipad in here.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
To the Joby guys, but
just like Union Center Boulevard was a public-private partnership.
Yeah.
And this developed into a business center and not your average, fast food restaurant and gas station exit. I mean, we want to have,
and that's true. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
That's a huge distinction, because you can drive up and down the many miles of highways across this country, and you don't find too many successful communities like West Chester that worked out the deal. And part of that solution is the public-private, where the government money starts the machine, but it was smart enough to back off.
Yeah.
Because the temptation here is to become a city and get a bunch of people who work for city government and start having a city council.
Yeah.
Right now you have 3 trustees that kind of run everything, and you guys can go fight it out all you want.
It's an efficient form of government, just like the county.
But it's as small as you can get.
Yep.
It still handle this many people and this large amount of dollars.
Yeah.
But can you imagine if you had a bunch of large city council, and then you had a mayor, and then it starts getting very political.
You could become inefficient and feckless.
Yeah.
And we certainly don't want that in a place like West Chester, where we have created such an environment, such a wonderful place to live, work, and play, to own a business, and to raise your family. I mean, so I don't know if people know this, but we are the largest jurisdiction in Butler County. We're larger than Hamilton. Right?
It doesn't surprise me.
We have more miles of road than any other community in Butler County. We have more than Hamilton. Right?
How many miles is it? Did you say it was 200 something?
240 miles.
240 miles of roads.
That doesn't include.
You have to handle.
That's right. That doesn't include county, state, and the federal stuff.
So when it snows, you're responsible for those.
Right. And so when it snows and Union Center Boulevard doesn't get plowed, people call the township going, "Hey,
why
aren't you out there?" And we have to let them know, "Hey, it's not our road. We'll call the county and see, when they're in the queue." Yeah. So, but getting back to this public-private partnership, those private enterprises that were the visionaries for the Union Center Boulevard exit, they were risk takers, they were developers, they were entrepreneurs. They dumped a ton of money into this thing. And you know what? They made a lot of money too. But you know what? That's a good thing. Because these business people, they don't just hoard it. They turn around and put more businesses in.
Yeah.
3,600 businesses in West Chester. That's West Chester's 35 square miles. That's 100 businesses per square mile. It's hard to believe.
And that's why it's any building that goes out of business or changes or moves, this one's been open for a little bit because it was a very glamorous building for a fitness center.
Yes.
Big parking lot, really kind of unusual.
Yeah.
But most buildings that go out don't last because West Chester's so lucrative and somebody else moves right back in.
That's right. And I think that this building is going for about $6 million right now. But this is for the last 30 years, we have had development on raw property, and businesses have gone in, commercial spaces and all that kind of stuff. In West Chester, the comprehensive land use plan, which the visionaries, the trustee visionaries in the early 90s put into place, designated 40% of West Chester to commercial industrial, we're in one of those places, and 60% to residential. Great balance. It's a great balance because, like we said earlier, the businesses pay a lion's share of the taxes, but they don't impact, let's say, safety service use. They don't impact the schools by having a bunch of kids go to school there. So this here is an example of a business that's now gone, and now we're in the redevelopment phase.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so this could be the tip of the iceberg when it comes to redevelopment. Because when you're in a place like West Chester, which is so affluent, and a place like this goes out of business, I'm telling you what, you don't want to be the best kept secret, right? You want to get the word out, and you want to make sure that people know. So I'll bet you that if we got the word out on this thing in a big way, that we could get this thing turned around into something amazing.
Oh yeah.
Quite honestly, I'm surprised with all the parking and all that kind of stuff in the pool that's in there that a hotel didn't come in and put it in there. You said it yourself. A lot of times these hotels are booked, and who are we to tell a developer or an owner of a hotel?
Yeah, okay. Tell them what to do.
Yeah.
But you want to create an empty tapestry for them to put some nice art.
Yeah, right.
Because every business is its own art.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, and all those guys that are running against you, it's almost funny to hear them talk and give their little snippets. And the election's not for a little bit, but this is the time to start talking about it.
Yep.
Not a single one of them, I don't think, could have a conversation about even incorporating a Joby vertiport. Or would even think to talk about. They might talk about landscaping.
Yeah.
They might talk about school funding, which you know how much that is and how much it kind of takes away from the creative enterprise you have. You have to have an excessive culture in order to fund it, right?
Yes.
So you have to keep growing if you want to sustain that level. But most of them get hung up. That's what they talk about the second generation. They can throw rocks at what's happened, but what's happened has been great, and you're really the only one left that is part of that greatness. We have people who've been around for a while, but they weren't part of that greatness. They've been part of the resistance of that.
Yeah.
And if you take your eye off the ball for just a little bit, it's easy to take it for granted and assume that it will work right, but it seldom ever does. So I'm really happy that you're going for it again. I think there's a lot of good things in the future that you're so good at all these things, and I don't know if people know that. But unfortunately, if you go to a meeting, a trustee meeting that has a forum, and that format only lets you get so much out.
Yep.
You go to these little forums, talk about options for the future, and people really don't know what they are. How would you want to handle it? You never get a chance to talk about it. And unfortunately, the media never knows how to ask the questions. So I'm glad we were able to come here today and talk about something really cool that started with us just talking about President Trump's executive order.
I know.
Unleashing this sucker and knowing they're going to build those vehicles right out the road.
I'm telling you what, that executive order could be the foundation of something really big. And while the foundation is being built, it takes a long time. You're saying, what's taking so long with the innovation coming here? But I would hope that in 2 or 3 years that we have something like that here in West Chester. And it would, again, cause jurisdictions around us to be envious of what West Chester is doing.
Well, I think we want to do that. And I think in order to get there, we need to re-elect you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I think it's enough for now. We could probably do this for many hours to come, but I think it's a good place to put a stake in it for the moment.
Yes, sir.
And when it comes to this next election, make sure to vote for Mark Welch, and I certainly support him emphatically, and we're going to have a lot more fun.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Rich.
All right.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, good day and a beautiful building. It just needs some excitement to go with it.
That's right. That's right. And we'll get it.
All right. Well, have a good day. This is Rich Hoffman here.
Mark Welch.
Have a good day and see you later.